Now, off the back of Real Madrid's campaign 24-25 season, I'm sure Real Madrid fans probably feel like it was very disappointing and underwhelming. Not only, they didn't get their hands on any silverware, but their staunch rivals, Barcelona, humiliated them across every fixture that they played in and also picked up some silverware in the process. Now, I think the only silver lining maybe in the season is how well Kylian Mbappe managed to end the season, given how he started in his first season at Real Madrid, and also the departure of Carlo Ancelotti. But I think Florentino Perez is cooking something. Xabi Alonso, Dean Huijsen, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Alvaro Fernandez could potentially be the next incoming and ready, and still so much of the transfer window to go. So we're going to talk about it. So make sure you hit the like button, be sure to subscribe, let me know your thoughts down below. Now let's start with probably, I think, the season that Real Madrid had and why it was essential for them to go into the transfer window immediately. Similar to, the likes of Liverpool, etc., where the window hasn't even opened, but they're making moves already. I think it was important for Real Madrid to go in there and address the dying problems that they have, because those problems were revealed to the entire world to see throughout the season. I think two big problems that Real Madrid have. There's other problems as well, but I think the two biggest problems that they have, of course, is that backline situation, that aging backline, the injury-prone backline, the backline that you cannot get a consistent, 5 games of the same backline involved. I think that's the first thing. And for me, the second thing in particular is the midfield. Now, Luka Modric retiring, I think, is a big, big thing for them, because I felt like the absence of Cruz was felt throughout the season. You're missing that deep lying playmaker. You've seen in some games I've seen this season, Real Madrid trying to replace that maybe by playing Fede Valverde in midfield. Tchouaméni maybe does not excel in those areas in comparison to Modric and Cruz. And unfortunately for Tchouaméni, he spent a lot of the season playing across different positions, both in the back line and the midfield. Now, like I said, there's one bright spark for them that they can kind of take into the following season, and that's Kylian Mbappe. Golden boot in La Liga, more than 40 goals across all competitions. And most importantly, I think it's the fact that he managed to find and get himself out of the slump. I remember back in October, Champions League games up against, the likes of Liverpool, etc. People were saying, is Kylian Mbappe the right decision? Is he the right fit for Real Madrid? Because I think he took quite some time to get into gear 3, if you want to say that, or even gear 2. I remember the first El Clasico of the season. It was a very tough watch, even as a neutral. It was really tough to watch Kylian Mbappe in that, because yes, Barcelona, you know how they're going to play, but Real Madrid struggling and him struggling so much, the spotlight is going to be on him. Now, in the future, I don't know, Madridsters, let me know how you guys feel. Do you guys feel like this is going to be Kylian Mbappe's team? Do you feel like it's going to be Vinny's team? Because I do think that they can coexist in a system, but I think one of them has to be Superman and the other one has to be the sidekick. Both of them cannot be the main star in the act. And I really do look at both players, and I think if there was a player to not essentially build around, because PSG tried to do the same thing with Mbappe, and it didn't really come to fruition in terms of in Champions League. But if you're wondering what's the position that each player flourishes in and who can give you the best in each position, I mean, Kylian Mbappe playing as a 9 isn't really a 9. He likes to come out wide. Vinicius likes to hold the width. So you've already got two players out wide. I think Real Madrid are lacking that focal point. Sometimes, you think of previous seasons where they don't have a prolific number 9, but they have a number 9 who can just occupy the back line and take a lot of weight off the wingers. And as a result of the fact that Mbappe and Vinny were both on the pitch together, throughout the season, you're seeing a lot less go through the right-hand side. And that means Rodrigo's numbers were not down, because I think it was consistent compared to what he provides in, for example, La Liga, but his involvement in the game was inconsistent. And you can see in particular in games throughout, I remember the Arsenal game across both legs, non-existent in the first leg in terms of Rodrigo. So maybe he might have to look at, potentially departing. But if you're thinking about, where Real Madrid are heading down. I mean, let's start with the biggest coup, if you want to say, in terms of the summer transfer window, and that's managing to get Trent Alexander-Arnold and managing to tempt him away from a move from Anfield. Because yes, he's been at Liverpool for 20 years. He's won everything there is to win with them. He's won 2 Premier Leagues, a Champions League. But I also think it's the story behind, why Anfield and Liverpool is such a big place for a person like him, having come through the academy, making his debut, becoming one of the best right backs in Europe. On top of all of that, he's born and bred Liverpool, bleeds Liverpool. I mean, people might be questioning it now that he's left, especially leaving on a free, where Liverpool don't benefit financially from his departure. We've seen in the past players, what they tend to do is sign a contract potentially with a gentleman's agreement to just so that their team can benefit financially from their departure. Now, I don't even think Trent is the biggest signing for them, if I'm being honest. It's a great signing, getting him on a free, and we know how Real Madrid and Florentino Perez likes to play in terms of free signings. They're probably eyeing up a couple of other players next summer for that back line as well. But I don't think Trent is the biggest kind of player, or they're going to benefit the most from signing Trent. There's another player that I'm going to speak about very briefly as well. But in terms of what Trent is going to offer, I think the most difficult thing right now is trying to predict how Xabi Alonso is going to play. Yes, Ancelotti has left, but they've replaced him with a Xabi Alonso who's coming off of the back of, I think, some great developmental phases at Bayer Leverkusen, and taking them to a Europa League final, taking them to a unbeaten title. That's not a joke. That is serious. Some serious fundamentals of coaching went into that. So I'm really intrigued to see how Xabi Alonso pans out at Real Madrid, and also how he uses Trent, because we've seen, in his system at Bayer Leverkusen when he was playing with a back three, I don't think he's necessarily going to come in and implement that straight away. I think he's going to look at what he has at his disposal and kind of nitpick that and, alter it into the best way that he wants them to play some free-flowing attacking football. Because if you watch Bayer Leverkusen in their unbeaten season in particular, you would have seen the football that they were playing was magnificent football. It was free-flowing football. It was attacking football. It was exciting football. And Trent Alexander-Arnold will definitely be able to add to that. And he will also be able to add to, I think, the deep-lying midfield issues that they have in terms of playing out from the back and being able to progress the ball from the back line. I think he will be able to offer that kind of alternative. Now, yes, he's a right back, and yes, he's got his defensive deficiencies. But sometimes I look at Real Madrid's fullbacks and I think, who doesn't have their defensive deficiencies, especially this season? But I think if Real Madrid managed to sign some quality centre backs that cover for, maybe what he lacks. I think sometimes Trent's defensive issues is exaggerated a little bit, but I do think they are definitely on show. I've definitely seen it throughout his time at Liverpool, and Konate covering for him, and Matip covering for him, and Joe Gomez covering for him. Whoever's playing that right-sided centre-back role, I've seen them cover for him. And maybe that might lead to next summer, Real Madrid targeting William Saliba, who I think can definitely be tempted away from Arsenal. I think that's not even an argument or conversation really to be had. But you look at the centre-backs that Real Madrid have, they've just signed Dean Housen, and who we're going to talk about him, but, they've got Rudiger, an aging Rudiger, Militao, David Alaba, Militao coming off of 2 ACL injuries, Rudiger with his injury issues, Alaba with his injury issues. In terms of experienced centre-backs, because they've got young centre-backs as well, but in terms of experienced players in that back line, or even in the squad, you're looking at the most experienced players at Real Madrid bit by bit departing. And, in the midfield right now, who's the most experienced player there? In the front line, who's the most experienced player there? Yes, you've got players that have, won Champions Leagues with Real Madrid and have won league titles with them, Bellingham, Vinicius, etc. But you need, with age comes experience, and you need that leadership with that. So I definitely see Real Madrid targeting somebody's centre-back in the coming summer next year. This year, if they're able to tempt away a major centre-back from one of, Inter Milan, or for the likes of, Arsenal, for example, I would be really impressed. I would be impressed with Florentino Perez, and I will give it to him, and I'll salute him and all of that, because he's cooking something. Like, if we talk about just the centre backs and the quality that they're getting in Dean Huijsen, I've watched Bournemouth a lot this season, and I always wondered how did Juve just let him go without any clear cut opportunity into the first team. And I think Juve could have done with a centre back like Dean Huijsen. He's so good on the ball, good under pressure. Again, addressing the issues of the ball progression that I feel like I saw Real Madrid lack so much this season, that it was very static to a point where Bellingham would drop deep and try drive the ball forward, but sometimes he'd be unsuccessful with that. Dean Huijsen offers that. He's good on the ball. He's good at reading the game. Now, my only concern is sometimes in his 1v1 stand-up defending, he can maybe, get caught out against a more pacier player. But his reading of the game is great. And, if he's playing on that left-hand side where he, predominantly plays, he will hopefully have a player like Alvaro Fernandez, who again is good defensively, but even better going forward. And Real Madrid are investing in quality from a young age, but let's not like kid anybody. The pressure of playing at Real Madrid is completely different to the pressure of playing at Bournemouth. And I'm actually happy that Dean Huijsen picked Real Madrid as his destination. He was linked to Chelsea, he was linked to Liverpool, he was linked to Newcastle in particular. He was even linked to a move back to Juve. But I'm glad he picked Real Madrid, because I think there's nowhere better as at a young age, taking that big step and taking that big risk. If it pays off, you will benefit from it, amazingly. And you look at the other side of La Liga in terms of the rivals that Real Madrid have in Barcelona, and they've got a world-class centre-back in Pau Kubasi. So it's really great to see Real Madrid, targeting young, great talents. I mean, it also shows how serious they are that before the season even ended in the Premier League, they notified Bournemouth, they agreed terms with him and was ready to pay his release clause. Because I made a video with Sky Sports a couple of months ago, and I said that Dean Huijsen should be going to Real Madrid. And my only worry was, Real Madrid haven't really spent big money on a centre-back. The last time they did that was Militao, and that was many years ago. So I was a bit cautious about whether Florentino, Perez and Real Madrid would do that. But they identified the issues with their centre-backs and they addressed that. But the homecoming for this young kid here in Alvaro Fernandez, coming through, multiple academies, including Real Madrid's one. And guys, I'm a Man United fan. I am so disappointed that he never got one senior start at Manchester United. I watched him a lot at Preston North End when he was on loan. He had the second best loan spell from Manchester United players that season. He was so impactful as a left wing back. Even this season as well at Benfica, he's been doing so well. And again, quality going forward, defensively one-on-one, he's sound, can come into the central spaces, can get the ball forward, puts great deliveries into the box, can link up well with the wingers. Real Madrid will benefit from this kid here. They will really benefit from him. And if they pay the release clause, even better, because I said I'm a United fan, guys. Man United will benefit from that release clause as well, because they have a sell-on clause as well. But I'm happy that he can get that big move, because I was such a big fan at him when he was when he was at Manchester United. I really wanted him to get a chance. And it's funny because Man United now play with wing backs, and he would have been perfect for that. And he never even got one start at Manchester United or one opportunity to play for the senior team. And now he will get that opportunity to, be able to play in the biggest stadium in Europe, under the biggest lights and the biggest pressure. But I think he's made for this pressure. Similar to Dean Huijsen, I think both of them are made for this pressure. And Real Madrid's kind of recruitment strategy, I'm glad that they're now looking in Europe when it comes to young players. Real Madrid have been kind of prolific for signing players from South America, and now they're looking at Europe in players and in teams where people have 1 or 2 years experience of senior football but can play to that level, and they can develop, because Real Madrid again is a great place to go and develop. So I'm really intrigued to see how the window goes. But let me be totally honest, guys. Let me be totally honest. This has to be the start for Real Madrid. This, with all of everything coming up, the Club World Cup, transfer window, I also think next season has to be a redemption arc for them in terms of what Barcelona achieved this season in comparison to what they achieved. And I know, Real Madrid last season achieved a lot in comparison to what Barcelona did. So maybe that level of competitiveness between the two are finally returning, because, that is one of the best rivalries as a neutral to watch. But I really think, with signing Trent, with signing Dean Huijsen, with potentially signing Alvaro Fernandez, they address some issues in terms of, quality in the back line, and obviously with the injury problems that they have, and, the ball progression, ball progression, sorry. And I still think they need a deep lying playmaker. I really do. Let me know your thoughts down below, Real Madrid fan. And you know what it is, guys. Throughout the transfer window, I'll be dropping videos across all European clubs. So make sure you guys drop me a subscribe, hit the like button, comment down below as well what you lot think of so far Real Madrid's transfer window, because it's starting pretty well for the deficiencies that I think that they need to address.